Thank you. So, yes, I'm Ryan Fisher with Edward Jones. So, you might be saying, why is a financial advisor here talking to me about this type of topic? Well, basically, if I can help you eliminate that one big mistake, I'm going to be worth my weight in gold. And if you knew how much I weigh, I'd be worth a lot right there. One of the things that I would tell you is just simply to be successful is you got to have a plan. Everyone that I know that is crazy successful, they didn't just get there by luck. They didn't just happen. Now, there's some people that we know, they're lucky. There's some people that we know have some special skills, like, God gave the gift for some people to dunk a basketball. He gave me the gift to drive a golf ball 90 degrees, so I can't really use that the way I want to. But we all have certain gifts, and you got to have a plan. And part of that plan that I'm going to talk about today is just simply putting some safety measures into your business. And when we look at this, one of the things that we're going to talk about is just simply this concept of, it's just called a personal line of credit. So a lot of times, if you look at my business background, I guess, let me start from this standpoint. My business background, I came from big box consulting. I've implemented businesses from the ground up. So if you go back to 2000, one of my claim for fame is I implemented Polo.com. So I have a little bit of responsibility for putting Ralph Lauren on the internet. I've launched major companies from really where it's just an executive team. I've launched multiple e-commerce sites. When you look at what I've done, I've been around the block long enough to know sometimes we start doing things the hard way and we don't know it. Sometimes we're taught things and we keep following what we're taught, and many times we don't realize there's a better or easier way of doing it. So you can kind of kick me for maybe having a lack of a creativity here, but if you've heard the story of a young married couple, they're having dinner and they're having ham, and so it's the spouse doing the cooking, and she pulls out the ham, she pulls out this big cleaver and cuts off the end, she puts it on the tray, she goes and puts it in the oven, and as they're eating it, the husband asks, why, when you create a ham, you cut off the end? She goes, well, I'm not really sure, that's what Mom always did. So they call up Mom and say, Mom, when you cook a ham, why is it that when you cook a ham, you always cut off the end? And she goes, well, I'm not sure. Grandma always did that, and that's where I learned. So they all call up Grandma, and they say, Grandma, when you cook a ham, why is it that you cut off the end? And Grandma says, well, back when I was cooking, I just had this little itty pan. And a lot of times, that's exactly what's happening to us. We've heard or learned something, and we don't really necessarily know why. And I'm just here to tell you there's one thing that I can utilize for you that maybe is a little bit easier for you. So when we talk about what is a personal line of credit, we're going to talk about just three things. Just what is it, how does it work, and how can I use it for my business? When we look at what is it, it's very, very simple. So the reason why I don't have a PowerPoint and all that, we're going old school today, all right? So a personal line of credit is just simply using investments as collateral. Okay, so this is where we actually have to have something to start with. So I'm a little bit more of the in the business guy, not necessarily the outside the business guy. And we can do it two ways. We can either look at existing assets that you have through an old 401k. We can look at existing investments that you have outside of retirement. We can look at your cash flow. We can look at savings. We can look at all kinds of options there. So when we look at it, a lot of times I'm working with a startup company. We're really just looking at the cash flow that they have, and it could be as little as $50 a month. It doesn't have to be a lot. So when we look at it, it's really just using investments as collateral. It does not include cash or money market. It actually has to be an investment. So that's rule one. So a loan is taken against the amount. So if I want you to remember two things, 50% and 6%. Okay, two things, 50% and 6%. So simply put, you can borrow up to 50% of those assets. So simple math, you got 10 grand, it's 5 grand. You got 20 grand, it's 10 grand. And the good thing about it is that the assets then, if we take a loan, they're not gone, they're still there. So if you're putting money into the business, a lot of times people are doing this and they put it in and it's cash, and yes, it has to be spent and it's gone. Problem then is if you need more money, what do you got to do? Well, you got to come back out of your pocket or other extended sources, and it's gone. So this concept is trying to keep the money that you've made outside of your business, and if we're going to put it in the business, it's still there. Because I've seen way too many people devastate their finances. I've seen way too many people take everything they have, throw it into business, and business does not always turn out the way we like it to be, right? There's all kinds of market forces. We can control our activity, but we can't control what happens on the other end. So the concept here is just a simple way of showing you how to use your money and keep it. So we can borrow up to 50% of the account value. Interest rates are tied to prime. So I work with Edward Jones. We are a private company. We do not have to make shareholders happy. So our rates start at 6% and go down from there. Our rates are actually determined, it's based on prime, but it's also based on the relationship that we have with you. Any other lender, you take a loan, what's it based on? The amount of the loan. Ours is based on the amount of assets that you're investing with us. So if you have outside assets or you have strong cash flow through your business, and we continue to build this up, the more you have with me underneath the Edward Jones umbrella, the less your lending is going to cost you. There's daily accrual of interest. So simply put, that what's going to happen is if you have that interest and you don't continue to pay it, it's going to compound monthly. So daily accrual of interest, but compounding monthly. So if you don't make a payment that month, that interest gets added on, so you do end up paying interest on interest, so that's the only negative. But we're basically saying it's 6%. So $10,000 is $600, so $50 a month. So the concept is, I'll show you some examples here on how we can actually apply that. There is no repayment schedule, so it's flexible. So normally when you take a loan, what's the first thing you got to do? You got a payment schedule, right? And you have a mandatory minimum. Well, at least with this, it's your own assets. There is no payment schedule. So that's the only thing is if you're not at least making some type of payment, it's a little bit of that interest on interest. So this is really built for short-term needs. This is not a long-term tool. It's got to be something where we have a goal, and I really want you to think of that, maybe that 1 to 3 year time frame. When interest rates are even lower, sometimes we have some people financing projects that are a little bit longer. But really, I would tell you that really that 1 to 3 year time frame is the sweet spot for this. Getting out longer, I just think that we have to do some different planning. So then if we look at, well, how does it actually work? Well, we get an account open. We figure out if there's assets outside that we can actually put in this. And all I got to do is you say, Ryan, I need some money. And I say, oh, great, 50%. If you have $10,000, I can get you $5,000 there tomorrow, or through an expedited process, I can get it to you there today. And the whole time that this money is on a loan, the investments that we have inside there are still building and growing. If there's interest or dividends or anything else inside there, we didn't sell anything. So if those were your assets to begin with, guess what? Those are still there. What we want to do then is, through our planning, is figure out is how can we, through the cash flow of your business, come back in to make those payments, and guess what? You're really paying yourself back. And those assets are still there. And if those assets are building and growing, let's say we had 10 grand and it grows to 12 grand magically, right? Well, now you have 6 grand to borrow from, not 5 grand. And this process is something that if we can just steal $50 a month, $100 a month, $1,000 a month, whatever's available, and we continue to add to this pool, the more it builds and grows, 50% and 6% cost. It's that simple. And there really isn't anything more to it other than what we got to do from a planning standpoint is really just sit down and look at, if we don't have any outside assets, it's cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. I get that. So I know some of you, depending on where you're at in the business, you're going to look at me and say, oh, Ryan, I don't have any cash flow. Hard part about that then is I can't help you with this process, but I will tell you, as long as you're a good, viable business and you have some good accounting going on, there's been very, very few scenarios where we haven't been able to sit down and at least get $50 a month going to get this process started. And so I could at least steal $50 a month from your salary, and then I've had some business owners saying, well, I'm not taking a salary. Well, I get it. Then it's not now. I can't help you. I got to have some cash flow through the business. And usually what's happening is if we go back and say, well, how can we improve this? It goes back to some of the issues that were already highlighted by Pam. If you look at it, a lot of times what I'm seeing is the biggest issues that I'm seeing business owners do is that they're not having any savings account. So I know it's cash flow, cash flow, cash flow, but if we're actually having good cash flow coming through the business, it's not having a savings account is like me telling you, just keep working, just keep saving. Just don't worry about saving, it'll all work out. So in my mind, that's lack of planning. Because I've never had where someone came to me and said, Ryan, here's an easy life. Business has never gone the way I always thought it would be. It's never just been that simple straight line. So what we got to do is we got to plan for that oops, that bump, that gotcha. That's going to happen. It's going to happen. I used to think that I inherited that black cloud that my dad had hanging over his head. And I always thought, well, jeepers, I inherited that because stuff kept happening to me. And then I just realized it's really just life. And it's not always easy, is it? So what we got to do is the most successful people in life, if they've made a mistake, they don't make it twice. They figure out how to get over that hurdle. They figure out how to get around it. And they keep going. So it's having contingencies, things like that in place. And one way to have a contingency is just simply having a savings account at the bank. Because that rainy day fund is eventually going to happen. So not just that black cloud that put a little water on us, eventually that storm's going to come. And what we got to do is we got to help you then get to the point where we have this account where that storm comes that we can dip into it. And that's really where this business line of credit or this personal line of credit comes into play. So through your cash flow, or maybe when the sun is shining and it's a nice sunny day, we start making hay and we harvest and we put it into the barn. Why do farmers put the hay in the barn? They don't put it in for needing it right now. They put that hay in the barn for when they need it later, because there might be that drought. There might be too wet of a summer for the plants to grow the way they want. So that's a contingency, right? So it's just a simple way of allowing a contingency. So on my end, we would create this account. It's just a corporate account. So we just put it under your corporate ID. If it's your own personal assets, then we add it to that account. It's got to be a non-retirement account. It cannot be a Roth, cannot be an IRA, cannot be a 401k. It's got to be money that's outside of retirement. We could always steal from those sources, but the negative is there's taxes and penalties. So we got to be careful, all right? Because you cannot take a loan against an IRA. You cannot take a loan against a Roth account. Those are just the IRS rules. You can take a loan against a 401k. So one of the things we do is if I can get you through today, we got our savings account at the bank, all right? I get you through tomorrow for when that storm comes along, so we can actually borrow instead of just liquidating. And when the cash flow or good things come through, you're just paying it off. If I can help you with the future, if you have a 401k, then you can actually borrow against your 401k as long as it's set up in the plan. So all throughout this process, the end result is simply going to be the goal, the ultimate goal is to make you bankable. Because if we talk to the bank and money in equals money out, and we go to talk to the bank and say, hey, I have this project, or I have the next largest customer, or there's something else that we're trying to accomplish, we're trying to grow our business, and you go to the bank and they see how wonderful your company is, but then they go, oh, sorry, declined, because money in equals money out. Well, we got to show them by just simply having that savings account, we have some money, so then they might at least say if money in equals money out, they might look at that and say, well, at least I'll get paid back in some way. But that's the issue, is the bank's going to say, I need to see more positive cash flow. So all of a sudden, if we get this corporate account, our business line of credit, that's also collateral. So now there's another source that if you want a loan, the bank can look at and say, I can get paid back. So what the end result is that this is going to end up making you more bankable, and it's all about numbers at the bank. Because in today's rules and regulations, as Kristen will tell you, when we look at it, it's more complicated to get a loan today than it was even 5 years ago. I don't know how many of you have tried and working with the banks, but my ultimate goal is to help you become more bankable. We understand what they're looking at, and once we look through getting you through today, putting hay in the barn for tomorrow, potentially getting that 401k for the future, then all of a sudden we can get the line of credit at the bank, we can get the loan that we need, and what you're really utilizing on my end is really just a stepping stone. It's really just something that, it's really more of an accounts receivable gap. So when we look at it, so we heard a little bit of that, is that if we're having accounts receivables out there and we got to make payroll, we got to make things happen, where does that money come from? So what we can do is we can go to this corporate account. I just look in there, look at how much you need, and if there's enough in there, I just give it to you as a bridge loan. And if you're just waiting for that invoice to come in, let's say it's a month later, 2 weeks later, or whatever, it doesn't matter. All we do is pay it off. And the cool thing is we're just back up and running. We didn't even hit pause. So it's just another stepping stone to allow you to utilize the cash flow of your business and just get smarter and smarter and stronger. So 6% and 50%, the ultimate result is going to be that you're going to be bankable. And that's really what we got to do as a business. We have to have a good banking relationship. As well as if things are getting stronger and stronger, that's where your factoring and things like that come into play. So the good thing is this is going to set you up for more lending options down the road. So when we say, well, why would I have a financial advisor as part of my business? That's basically what I'm going to help you do. I'm probably one of the few people in the room that won't charge you by the hour. My time is free. Your money's going to cost you. It costs you anywhere you put it. I would just really kind of maybe leave you with this. It is that simple, but there are some risks. Okay, so we have to understand a few things here. So when we look at it, the first thing is that you could end up having, when you borrow against that, your borrowing cost could end up exceeding the rate of return in the account. Okay, so that is a risk. If this turns into a long-term loan, then what we might be forced to do is sell the assets inside there, sell the investments to cover the loan. I would call that a negative. If we have investments, and again, typically I'm going to use things that are boring by design. I can show you things that make 1% to 3% that have never lost money. Never is the word, and they say never, say never. It could happen in the future, but I'm just saying in the past they've never lost money, but you're only going to get 1% to 3%. I can show you things that have never lost money in a 3-year time frame. Might be a dip in the middle, but if you look at a 3-year time frame, they've never lost money in 3 years. If you have a 3-year goal, I can show you with confidence that money will be there for you when you need it. But there could be that crazy 2008, 2009 time frame when we have a market crash. And I can't control the market. And so if there's too much of a dip in our investments and we take a loan against it, there's something called a margin call where the firm is basically going to say there's a risk, you're going to be forced to come in and sell some assets to cover that loan. Now that's happened once, basically. I would say if we look at the last 15 years, there's been 2 major market crashes. The biggest one in 2008 was the fact that the market went down 37%. It happened once in the last 10 years. You go back to 15 years, from 2000 to 2003, we did have a 50% decline in the market then, but there were places to hide. So really, if I look at the last 15 years, you've had one major impact from that. And if we use those boring investments, you would relatively come out of that unscathed. So it's all about the risk of what you need to do, what the money needs to do for you and the business, and that's all it really needs to be. Is if we make smart decisions and not risky decisions, the money will be there for you. And it's boring. And I wish it was more exciting, but the problem is if your money's exciting, that means there's more wiggle in the middle. And what I don't want to do is have a strategy where we start allocating dollars and we get that wiggle and you get nervous. The more you get nervous, the more you're going to be willing to make a change that could probably not be a good idea. So if we have a plan, we got to execute, right? And so if a 3-year plan or 5-year plan or 10-year plan, you got to have a plan. If you have a goal and you write it down and it's outside your head, do you realize you're 70% more likely to achieve that result? 70% more likely. So many of you, if you have a goal or a plan, where is it? It's right in here. It's not in the real world yet. It's not in the real world because I do that all the time. Monday, I'm like, next week, I'm going to start dieting. I'm going to start hitting the gym. Well, it's in my head. I'm not held accountable. Nobody else knows about it if I haven't shared it with them. So I can just simply say, no big deal, we'll start next week, right? So the more you can get your thoughts, your business model, and actually put things together, even if it's just a blank sheet of paper and you do a brain dump, you're going to be much more likely to be successful than just keeping it all up here. The one thing that I do is I just ask you is just add me to your team. My time is free. I came from a business background that I really have a heart for the entrepreneur, the small business owners, because those are the people that I see are the good, hardworking people. They're trying to figure it out. And I'll say it this way to not be somewhat offensive, but you're awesome at what you do. You're just horrible at everything else. And the reason why is you're so focused on what you do, and that's exactly what you have to do. But my job is to not just try to figure out how to get in front of you and sell you something, to create a plan, get the resources in front of you. I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I work hard. I don't have all the answers, but the answers that I do have, I like to believe are good ones. I'll figure out with your business model and what you're trying to do the best way of getting resources as part of your business. You know, whether it's factoring or having someone help you with the credit side of things. that's the best thing I can do, is bring other resources to the table and help you build your board of directors. So just think of the people that you need to have to make your business more successful. You don't have to do this alone. I just ask you to add me as part of the team, and we go from there. So thank you very much.